you have spoken to me today about a music rating system. Could you go in a little bit into detail of your personal music rating system?
Okay, so this would require weeks of explanation. I'm going to try and do my best here, though.
Sure.
So what I have here in front of me, and let's go ahead and try and show it. So this is on my iPad.
Wow.
So this is a giant Google Sheets, and it extends further on and is very long. There's graphs, as you can see. There's colors. I mean, this is a whole thing we have here. So this is called Art's Big Board, which is named, of course, after the infamous Art Vandelay, the alter ego of George Costanza from Seinfeld, first created in the episode The Stakeout from season 1. So this is operated by myself and a friend of mine who was one of two, yes, two best men in my wedding, and we rank indie music. And the indie title genre is a bit amorphous, but so we extend beyond that probably, but nevertheless, the system attempts to achieve a ranking that is fair within the genre.
Mm.
Entities like Pitchfork, Rolling Stones, they obviously have favorites, beyond genre, and they have favorite artists, and generally they'll assign a singular reviewer to one band for the entirety of their discography, which will then lead to all types of issues. So what this does is it breaks the score down to multiple sections: a lyrics, a cultural or personal impact, a music score, and then cover art for a half of a percentage point. So it's weighted differently for each category, but it gives you a score out of 10. And the lowest rated album has I believe, a 4, which might be the most recent Moon Taxi album. I don't know if you've heard it, but it was not good. I'm a Moon Taxi fan. The best of which is This Old Dog by Mac DeMarco.
Mac DeMarco, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we could go on and on and on, but within this are what we all care about, and that is the Strokes' entire discography ranked according to the system on Art's Big Board.
So I'm gonna go ahead and do this real quick because I have also set up a big board.
Oh wow.
Yeah, is that coming through for you?
Yeah.
So before we get into this, I do have a comment I'd like to make on your music rating system. I was recently watching a dog show on TV, and what you said reminds me so much of the scoring they have because in many ways your rating system is comparing any album versus your sort of platonic ideal of indie music, and that reminds me, whenever they would show a certain dog breed, they would say this dog is not being judged against the other dogs. It's being judged against the standards of its own breed. So
Correct.
I don't know how much crossover there is right there, but that I would say that both rating systems hopefully ring true here. So according to the Art Vandelay rating system, I think we're going to do like a worst to best here. Not to be too
Okay.
negative, because I'm sure they're all great. What would you say is the Art Vandelay system's least favorite Strokes album?
The Art Vandelay system's least favorite Strokes album is, let me get down in here. So from Is This It to The New Abnormal,
Yes.
the worst ranking album is Come Down Machine, unsurprisingly. Much better album than society has given it credit for. The simple RCA album cover didn't help, but it comes in at 7.91 combined score on the Arts Big Board.
That's not even a bad score at all. That's a very solid
No.
score, I would say. I'm going to agree. I would say Come Down Machine is my least favorite Strokes album. Um, there's like a couple amazing songs on it, and then some that I find to be stinkers. As far as the album art itself, it's kind of like, yeah, it's definitely kind of on the lower end for Strokes albums, I
Sure.
would say.
Well, they pulled a media blackout. They didn't tour. They didn't, do any interviewing or anything leading up to the album. They were sort of done with they were. The consensus is that they were just releasing this to fulfill their contract with RCA for 5 albums. So the music is quite good, but everything else surrounding the album is not. I think it led to a lackluster reception by the general public. Yeah, I agree. There's some really good songs on here. 80s Come Down Machine, I have listed as my favorite song from the album.
Yeah.
But to give you a reference, at 7.91, the worst rated Strokes album, this is still 53rd out of over 150 albums ranked.
Right.
So
So this
so
is it's still like a 70th percentile album, you know.
yeah, this is a very well thought of album according to Art's Big Board.
Well, that's good to hear. What is number 5? What's the next up?
So just ahead of Come Down Machine is Angles. And again, I think that it's at 797, which is in my opinion a very good score. But doesn't do this album justice. I think if you keep it in the context of Strokes albums, a number 5 out of 6 looks bad somehow. But we're talking about the cream of the crop here. I mean, this is the Strokes, and this comes in. Excuse me, Come Down Machine came in at 57. This comes in at 53 out of over 150 albums ranked. So this is a well thought of album, and I think "Taken for a Fool" is one of the best Strokes songs. The refrain is terrific. Yeah, so this is a good album, and there's no denying that.
Some great singles on that one for sure. I'm gonna say my number 5. I'm actually gonna go First Impressions of Earth. This also has some of the greatest Stroke songs are on this album for sure. Red Light is probably my favorite Stroke song, period. Of course, You Only Live Once. You know, an iconic Stroke song, but I'm gonna put this in number 5. The second half for the most part kind of drags for me. I don't really like the production that much on it. I mean, it's still a good album. It's one I would, be perfectly fine putting on in the car and, driving along and listening to. But in terms of the Strokes discography, they're definitely ones I prefer more. So with that, what would be your number 4?
My number 4 is First Impressions of Earth, coming in at a score of 8.09 out of 10. And yeah, I mean, I think we're right there. I mean, obviously the difference is 12 points on the score, so not a big disparity between 4 and 5 here. I think Angles could very well be number 4. Obviously, Angles was an album that Julian Casablancas got very experimental on. It was the first album that had backing vocals, much more synths, some more interesting songs that I think take a lot of listens. Metabolism being one of them.
Yeah.
That is a very interesting song, but not something that feels that Strokesy on its face. And at First Impressions of Earth, really good album. I think this was sort of the last album that was expected to reach the acclaim of Is This It? And beyond this one, everybody sort of judged Strokes albums with their own took them for what they were rather than trying to compare them to Is This It? And so this album, I think, suffers a little bit from that comparison. But as you've highlighted, it's still a very good album.
I think it's a wonderful breakdown. I totally agree with what you have to say about Angles, which is going to be my personal number 4. Metabolism, it's funny you bring it up because the first few times I listened to that was by far my least favorite song on there. And last night in preparation for this, I decided to listen to the song, and I was like, I actually really appreciate it now. It'd been maybe a while since I last heard it, and I had just sort of a newfound appreciation. And I think I've listened to some music that's more similar to that in recent years. So I'm gonna go for Angles number 4. I really like Gratisfaction. That's a good song on there. And then the closer, Life is Simple in the Moonlight. It's a very fun, solid album, and definitely some new ideas that you start to see perhaps better executed in the later albums from the Strokes and also Voids.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I was going to say, is I think you get a sense of where Julian Casablancas was going with Voids here. And also sort of taking his solo work into this as well. I mean, Machu Picchu, Under Cover of Darkness, to just hit it off 1-2 right there. Terrific songs. I think it's easy to say that they are not overwhelmingly Strokesy compared to Room on Fire or Is This It? But solid songs. And I hate that this comes in at 5, but we have a saying at Art's Big Board, and that is trust the system.
Trust the system. Yeah.
I will trust the system and be happy with number 5 ranking for Angles.
All right, that means it's time for your number 3 ranking, or should I say Art's number 3 ranking?
Art's number 3, yes. So the Art's Big Board has it gets confusing here. Let me make sure I'm saying this right. I believe it's New Abnormal. It is the New Abnormal at number 3.
Their most recent. Oh, I'm gonna put you over here.
Right, which to give you an idea comes in at 8.3. We're getting into the top 20% here. I mean, this is literally number 20 out of 150 plus albums. So this has a special place on the board. It's the beginning of the top 20, and very exciting album. Obviously, such a long time between their fifth and sixth albums, Come Down Machine and now New Abnormal, and I think lyrically this album took a step forward in terms of its addressing climate change and other contemporary political issues, critiquing the American political system, and the adults are talking in a very, very good way, smart way. So yeah, I personally have a special connection to this album, and I think number 3 is where it belongs.
I now have a quick reveal for you because I forgot to show it to you at the beginning of the interview. So I'm going to switch to this. You may have guessed it.
Oh, I should have worn mine.
Yeah.
I saw the sleeves and thought, maybe is that a Casablancas jersey? And it is.
If I wear that on the mound versus Collegiate Wood Bat League team, how hard am I going to throw?
Probably very slow because it was not cut for physical activity.
Right.
But it certainly would look very good.
It is it has that baseball jersey look to it from a distance, but at the core it's truly a cardigan.
That's a good breakdown.
Yeah. I'm also going to agree with you. I'm going to put the New Abnormal at number 3. Their most recent outing, I think it's very cohesive. That's one thing I really admire about this record.
Mm-hmm.
If I could point out anything that I think separates it from the ones in the top 2 spots, I would say just the highs aren't as high. It's just a really, really solid album all the way through. My favorite song from this one is probably At the Door, which is definitely they dropped that as the lead single, and it was a ballsy pick as a lead single coming into that album. But it's a great song. And then of course, this is the album that truly reveals that the Strokes are a baseball band after all, with songs like Ode to the Mets and the music video with the Astros-esque, Tequila Sunrise jerseys, and they're playing baseball against robots.
Right. Yeah, a song that Julian Casablancas wrote on his way back from the 2015 World Series. So and he has admittedly said the song doesn't necessarily have anything directly to do with baseball, but the emotions he was experiencing after the Mets lost the World Series inspired the lyrics behind the song and just the general tone of the song. So yeah, very interesting. I appreciate that the Strokes are big baseball fans, of course. I was fortunate enough to see the Strokes in Chicago this year, and it was just a check off the bucket list of things I must do. So.
All right. Well, we're gonna move on here to number 2 from the Art Vandelay system. This is really where it just reveals what kind of people you are. I mean, this is as strong as a rivalry as it gets. Who comes in at number 2 on the Art Vandelay system?
Yeah, this is going to separate the men from the boys, as they say.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is where you really have to trust the system, because and I've had multiple discussions about this. Now this is where the cultural personal section really steals the cake, takes the cake. And Is This It is number 1. Room on Fire is number 2. Room on Fire coming in at 8.91, just missing a top 10 score, coming in at number 11. Is This It 9.41, the 3rd highest rated album on the entire board. So I suppose I'll begin with Room on Fire. I mean, you could argue collectively the best Strokes album. I think this is where you really get into a situation of the highs. How high are the highs? I think they're a little lower on Room on Fire than Is This It, with Hard to Explain and Someday. And it's hard to say that Last Night. I mean, it's hard to say Is This It isn't objectively the best Strokes songs with the best Strokes album with the best Strokes songs. That being said, a very complete album, Room on Fire. I think it's forgotten in a way, partially due to that need to compare everything to Is This It. I think that the conversation around the Strokes ends up being more about why the albums like First Impressions of Earth and Angles were so unlike Is This It, rather than how good Room on Fire is compared to Is This It. So it's a terrific album. The end has no end. The way it is. I mean, Meet Me in the Bathroom. You talk way too much. Completely forgotten songs. Phenomenal album all the way through. Just because of that cultural influence of Is This It, it comes in at number 2.
Yeah, this is where sort of the objectivity is really taking over because, Is This It was just a landmark album, completely changed the indie rock music scene overnight. And then Room on Fire was, at least for some, regarded as a disappointing follow-up, although has certainly become, more appreciated as the years go by. I have a couple questions real quick before we can get to my one and number 2. So with regards to Is This It, are you basing the album art off the American release, or at least this version I'm showing here, which is a little bit more kid friendly, family friendly, or
Correct.
the black and white photo, which is a little bit more risque?
So we go off of this album cover, this
Mm-hmm.
album art, which is the zoomed in is a zoomed in picture of I believe two atoms crashing into one another, some molecular experimentation, I believe. And you can search the little full scale picture and see that what this little snippet came from. But yeah, I mean, I think you got a terrific album cover score here. I can tell you what my specific ranking of this album art is, and that's an 8 out of 10, which is very good. Not the best, regarded as the best album cover art from the Strokes. First Impressions of Earth gets a 9, and Angles gets a 9. So, yeah, I mean, a solid art. Room on Fire, a bit more, strange and abstract. So the album cover art is going to go to Is This It on this one. But yeah, if you go off the initial released album art, then you have a different story.
All right, so it is time for me to finish up the ranking here. I'm going to go Is This It number 2, and then Room on Fire number 1.
Wow.
And it's a personal taste thing. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have, the same type of hard data that you're seeing in the Art Vandelay ranking system. For me personally, I just like it, it's a much I would say grimier, distorted follow-up to Is This It? And that's just kind of the music I like. I don't want a band to sound too competent in terms of their ability to sing or play instruments. I think that a lot of what I appreciate about music is found in sort of the shortcomings and the flaws. And I think Room on Fire just totally nails that. It's just perfect, garage, a garage rock music meets like indie rock meets that post-punk revival
Mm-hmm.
type scene, and I think it's just absolutely brilliant. Is This It also an all-time classic album, but my personal favorite is going to be Room on Fire. Is that a respectable choice, Spencer Strider, for number 1?
Absolutely, and I think you've highlighted an excellent point here, and that is the tone of this album really sounds like the Strokes' sort of direction and point of view on music being validated by Is This It, and then letting loose on Room on Fire. And the board accredits a higher score musically to Room on Fire than Is
Wow.
This It. As I mentioned, it's really that cultural impact of Is This It that you can't ignore and takes it over the top. Otherwise, I think they're extremely comparable albums. But yeah, musically, Room on Fire is the best Strokes album. So the despair. It's important to highlight how small the disparity is between 1 and 6, and then between 1 and 2. I mean, we're talking small numbers here. So we're talking a couple bloops, and that's really the difference. But your breakdown, you sound like a big car seat headrest guy. Am I wrong?
Well, based on a recent video on my Foolish Bailey channel, I could see how someone could get that impression. I would say, like, if we're talking about albums and bands that are more along that vein, I would say check out like Weather Day, like the album Come In. That's kind of like Car Seat Headrest, but a little bit more my style.
Okay, gotcha. Interesting. Well, we might have to get you on the board, get a little Bailey star ranking on the board.
Yeah, I would love to be a part of it. Spencer Strider, thank you so much for joining me today to talk the Strokes, and I'm sure we'll be seeing much more from you.
Yeah, it's an honor. Happy to be here anytime.